Yet another incredible performance from Mr. Connor Bedard, but it wasn't enough for the Hawks to overcome their early deficit. And on today's episode, I'll be breaking down the Blackhawks' 21st consecutive road loss, plus why the Hawks should model themselves moving forward after the Hurricanes. And I'll also be getting into Chris Peters and Corey Pronman's top 10 in the 2024 NHL Draft. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Quick plug. Go and follow my personal account at Jack Bushman 2 on X. You can also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey as well for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And if you're watching this on YouTube here today, please do me a quick favor. Make sure to go and smash that like button, comment down below, and subscribe for Celebrini. That's the new motto we got going on around here. And if you're a regular audio listener of the podcast, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of that good stuff, please make sure that you're constantly downloading all of the latest episodes. That really does help me out. And also go and rate and review the show, preferably with a 5-star rating. Those are always great. And I also got to let you know today's episode is brought to you by the Sleeper app, the go-to platform for daily fantasy sports. And right now, if you go and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, then you'll get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Hope everyone's Tuesday is off to a good start, or if you're tuning into this on Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, I hope the workday is treating you well thus far. I do want to apologize right off the top here for having the episode come out a little later than usual. Honestly, some of you may have saw my post that I had from this morning on social media. Wasn't really feeling all that good this morning. Wasn't feeling all that good last night when I was about to go to bed. Was tossing and turning all night. Didn't really get to sleep until like 5, and then had a quick turnaround for work this morning and wasn't able to squeeze in the show. But as they say, better late than never, and we got plenty to get into on today's episode, so let's go ahead and get on into it. As the Chicago Blackhawks were back in action, taking on the Carolina Hurricanes for, believe it or not, their lone road game here in the month of February. And as I talked about when I was previewing this matchup during Monday's episode in segment 3, I said the Blackhawks were going to have to be on their toes, be fully engaged for an entire 60-minute game, not to win against the Carolina Hurricanes, because honestly, I didn't think that was in the cards whatsoever, but just to hang in there against a really well-rounded Hurricanes bunch that, quite honestly, has given the Hawks some fits over the last couple of years. Hawks have been shut out in each of their 2 previous games against the Hurricanes, and I believe had just 4 wins total in their last 17 overall in the head-to-head matchup. So it had been tough for the Hawks. They needed to be really good just to hang in there, and they certainly were not that in the opening 40 minutes of this game. Basically, right from the opening faceoff, Carolina was dominant in puck possession, a lot of time spent in the Hawks' defensive zone, and anytime they didn't have the puck, they were absolutely hounding it, forcing the Blackhawks to make errant passes and turnovers in the D zone. And I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I saw the Hawks defensemen in their own end have to pass the puck behind their own net because of the forechecking pressure by the Carolina Hurricanes, I'd probably be retired and not doing the show here, because it was happening an awful lot. Only 1-0 Carolina after the opening 20 minutes, but that was mostly thanks to another lofty start out of Peter Mrazek in net, but he could only do so much. The second period, things started to get out of hand in a hurry. The Hawks' defensive breakdowns in their own end really started to catch up with them. They were leaving guys all alone right out in front of Mrazek, way too much space. And all in all, Carolina's speed and puck movement was just way too much for the Blackhawks to handle in those opening 40 minutes. Carolina outshot the Hawks 31-9 in the first 2 periods. So yeah, not the start that the Hawks needed to keep this one close. They fell behind 4-0. And I mean, how many times have we seen this Blackhawks offense go and score 4 goals in a single game. Not very often. So, yeah, it was basically all said and done right there in the middle frame. Nick Foligno did score in the second, though, to stop the bleeding a little bit with his 13th goal of the season. And what a goal it was from Foligno, a spinorama backhander. He does that from time to time, man. Like, he'll just pull out something from his arsenal that you didn't think he still had at this point of his career. A really impressive goal there from Foligno, extending his point streak to 6 games. Connor Bedard with the primary assist, a.k.a. the usual suspects for the Blackhawks. But like I said, it was basically all she wrote after the second period with the Hawks trailing by a bunch. It felt like it was just kind of time to wave the white towel, if you will, going into that third. And just hopefully the Hawks weren't going to allow it to be any uglier than it already was. But I'll give them a little bit of credit. They did fight back and make things a little bit interesting late. It wasn't at even strength. They didn't really muster up anything all night in that department, had just 11 shots on goal at 5-on-5 and only 3 high danger chances. Not very good. But they did score 2 power play goals for the first time since December 17th, Blackhawks fans, which is a little bit encouraging, especially against a good defensive team in the Carolina Hurricanes. The first was Mr. Connor Bedard, although it looked like he had scored prior to that. The first time, he had scored his 17th goal of the season. It had got overturned for offsides once again, the second in as many games for 98, third on the season. And what was funny about that one was after the second period, Carolina Hurricanes goaltender Spencer Martin, who has basically been a career AHLer, the Canes claimed him off of waivers from the Blue Jackets just before the start of the regular season with the goaltending position a little banged up for the Canes, plus Peter Kochetkov needing a night off. They rolled with Spencer Martin in net, and he and Connor Bedard kind of got into it there at the end of the second period when both teams were exiting the ice to go back to their dressing rooms. They were definitely chirping back and forth at one another before the second intermission. And then after Bedard scored that goal, which, by the way, came from another beautiful pass from Philip Kurashev, an easy tap in for Bedsy. He goes, no celly, and just stares down Spencer Martin in net, which I absolutely love that. At 18 years of age, he's willing to play the game within the game. He's not willing to back down from anyone, and he's not scared of anything, man. Connor Bedard will go out there without any fear, and he's going to do what he does, and he's got the skill to back it up, certainly. Spencer Martin goes in, points at the scoreboard after Bedard is just staring him down, which, okay, Spencer Martin, pretty big brag there. You're beating the Chicago Blackhawks on home ice. Who expected that? Oh, wait, only everybody. And then Bedard winds up getting the last laugh for real this time with his 17th goal of the season. Again, coming on another incredible feed from Philip Kurashev, a behind-the-back no-looker. And I'll tell you what, this guy is feeling himself, Blackhawks fans. The confidence is clearly sky high with the stuff he's doing out there on the ice. And I've said it time and time again over the last, few weeks, maybe the last couple of months now. But Philip Kurashev's offensive progression has just been dynamite this season. One of the better storylines for the Chicago Blackhawks. He also extended his point streak to 6 games with that assist. And he actually made the play happen, leading to Nick Foligno's goal to get the Blackhawks on the board. Just a simple dump in by Foligno, who goes and chases the puck down to force kind of an errant pass by the Canes defender because he had to make it a little quicker than he originally expected. It was Philip Kurashev, not credited with an assist, but he really made the play happen. And then right after that, the Hawks struck again on the power play, and who else but Connor Bedard, setting up Tyler Johnson in front for Bedard's 3rd point of the game. Johnson's 11th tally of the season. That gave the Hawks a little life late, but as the Hawks do, just seconds after cutting their deficit to 2, they took a penalty, kind of lost the wind in their sails, and then the Canes go on to add the empty netter to seal this one, a 6-3 final out in Carolina. The usual suspects made things a little bit interesting late, but it was the 21st consecutive road loss for the Chicago Blackhawks. I cannot believe we're still talking about this, Hawks fans. Still haven't won a game on the road since November 9th in Tampa, over 3 months ago. It's unbelievable. And I'll tell you what, it's hard to gauge exactly what kind of coach Luke Richardson is, good or bad. I think the future is only really is the only way we're going to know when the Blackhawks start playing more meaningful games. And I haven't critiqued Luke Richardson for very much other than the handling of Lucas Reichel a little bit, which admittedly is on Lucas Reichel too. And I get the Hawks have dealt with injuries and everything, but 21 consecutive road losses is absolutely unacceptable. It falls on the players too, but man, that streak is really, it's hard to wrap your mind around that the Blackhawks haven't won a road game since the beginning of November. It's gone on for far too long, and the Hawks aren't going to have an opportunity to snap that skid anytime soon. As like I said, this was their lone road game here in the month of February. They're headed back to Chicago, where they'll be taking on the Philadelphia Flyers tomorrow night. Hey, considering it's at the UC, at least that means the Blackhawks have a chance to win, because we sure know it has not been good for them on the road for quite a long time. All right, there are my thoughts on the Hawks' road losing streak, hitting 21 games after the loss to Carolina on Monday. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I'll get into draft analysts Chris Peters and Corey Pronman's top 10 players as of right now, leading into the 2024 NHL Draft. But first, I got to talk to you all about Camino Consulting. How would you like to get to know someone better in an hour than you would in a year? Understanding one another better prevents small misunderstandings from becoming big, ongoing fights. And after providing more than 20 years of service to small and mid-sized businesses, helping management groups navigate conflict and onboarding new employees, Camino is now offering a digital seminar for both families and couples. Did your Valentine's gift of tickets to the big game not go over as well as you had hoped? Well, if that's the case, you can go and get couples and family online seminars for 25% off for the entire month of February if you use the discount code LOCKEDON. Again, that is discount code LOCKEDON for 25% off the rest of the month of February at www.caminoconsulting.ca, or you can mention LOCKEDON when reaching out for a business seminar, and you'll receive the first 5 profiles for free. Again, that's www.caminoconsulting.ca, and make sure to use that discount code LOCKEDON for 25% off the rest of the month of February. All right, segment 2 with the 2024 NHL Draft just kind of creeping up, Blackhawks fans. And considering this team is expected to be in the mix for the Macklin-Celebrini sweepstakes the rest of the season, it's about that time where I'm going to start kicking up coverage on the 2024 NHL Draft. And I've talked about some few prospects in the last couple of weeks, and back at the World Juniors, I outlined some key prospects to keep an eye on that will be eligible for the 2024 NHL Draft. So I am a little bit familiar, especially with the top end guys, but I still haven't really fully dove into all of these players. And look, give me some slack out there, Blackhawks fans. I got to keep up with this dog water hockey team day in and day out. I'm tracking all of their prospects to see how their development has been going. And then I also got a golf gig on the side too, plus my regular job. So yeah, it's been a little tough, constantly keeping up with all of these prospects. But like I said, the Blackhawks are going to be in the mix for one of the top selections yet again this season. And it's an opportunity for them to snag another really good player, and potentially even Macklin-Celebrini if they come away with the number 1 pick following the draft lottery for the second consecutive year, which would make the fan bases of the other 31 NHL teams absolutely furious. And I would personally love it. I would think it would be absolutely hilarious. But yeah, it's just a couple of months away, and I figured now that we have Scott Wheeler, Bob McKenzie, Chris Peters, and Corey Pronman, all of them recently have released their rankings of players for the 2024 NHL Draft. Each of their lists are a different length. Some of them, I believe Chris Peters only dropped 30. Bob McKenzie, I think, dropped 80 prospects. I'm going to be going through, all of the players projected to go around the first round, and probably in the second as well, considering all the picks that the Blackhawks do have. But what I'm going to be starting with today is the top 10 for Chris Peters and Corey Pronman's rankings of their 2024 NHL Draft eligible prospects. And I'm going to be also going into Scott Wheeler and Bob McKenzie's on a later episode this week. I'm not sure if that's going to come out on Wednesday or Thursday as of yet, but I'm going to start with the top 10s for each of those 4 and then kind of work my way down. And then as we start to creep towards the end of the season, I'll get into particular player profiles, breaking them down individually in individual episodes. I'll also be giving out my mock draft, probably a little bit closer to draft time, actually. I know some people have been asking for that, but quite honestly, I'm just not familiar with all of these prospects yet to give like a full 1 to 32 list like I did last year, but the time will come, and this is how we start getting more familiar with these guys. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. For Chris Peters, coming in at number 1, I'm going to start with Chris's list first, and then I'll go into Corey Pronman's. Coming in at number 1 here, no surprise, and I'm just going to blow it now. Spoiler alert, Macklin Celebrini is number 1 on all 4 of these guys' lists. But interestingly enough, after number 1, if you've been kind of keeping up with how this draft shapes out, it really is a question mark who's going to go numbers 2 through 10. There's not anything like set in stone at this point in time. So it's going to be a really intriguing draft this year after Macklin Celebrini goes number 1 to whoever wins this year's draft lottery. But Celebrini, is deserving of being the number 1 overall pick. I don't even think it's a question at this point. I think this is how confident I am in Macklin Celebrini going number 1 overall. I think there's a better chance that Connor Bedard loses the Calder Trophy race than Macklin Celebrini not going number 1 overall. That's the one that's set in stone here. The only thing set in stone in this year's draft. And like I said, it's for a good reason. He is tearing up college hockey as a 17-year-old. Boston University, one of the best programs in the country. He's their top line center. He was one of the top players for Team Canada at the World Juniors. He's got 42 points in 26 games as a freshman this year for BU, 23 goals in 26 games, nearly a goal per game guy. Also added 8 points in 5 games at the World Juniors for Team Canada, 4 goals and 4 assists. Macklin Celebrini's going number 1 overall. But here, like I said, is where it gets interesting. Number 2 for Chris Peters is Artem Levshunov, a defenseman prospect that's been mentioned here on the show previously when I was talking to Hadi Kalakash about all of the Blackhawks prospects. And this was a guy that he said, if the Blackhawks don't get the number 1 overall pick, this is a guy they could be targeting because of their need to add right-handed defensemen. They got a plethora of guys on the left-hand side, but other than Seth Jones and Sam Renzel, there really isn't anyone there long-term. I guess you could throw Louis Crevier into that mix if he pans out, but, 7th round pick, kind of a guy that's just up right now because of the injuries. So Leshunov does seem like an intriguing target for the Blackhawks, undeniably 6'2", 200 pounds, right-handed defenseman, nearly a point per game guy as a freshman for the Michigan State Spartans, 28 points in 30 games this season, 8 goals and 20 assists. Levshunov figures to be, if not the first right-handed defenseman off the board, then probably the second at the very least. Number 3 for Chris Peters is Caden Lindstrom, the 6'4", 215-pound power forward who in 46 games this season for the Medicine Hat Tigers of the WHL has 27 goals and 19 assists. Feels like he is probably going to be a top 5 pick at this point in time. That seems like a pretty safe bet if I had to guess. 4 for Chris Peters is Anton Silayev, the 6'7", 215-pound left-handed defenseman that's already playing pro hockey over in Russia in the KHL at 17 years of age. And he's got 11 points in 59 games, which is nothing to bat an eye at. So it's going to be interesting to see where the big boy Silayev winds up going. Ivan Demidov comes in at number 5, kind of a polarizing guy. I think some people will have him as high as number 2 or number 3 in their mock drafts, and then some people will have them further down to number 8, number 9, number 10. A really skilled forward who also is just about to start getting KHL action at 18 years of age, 5'11", 170 pounds with really good speed and skill. 57 points in 28 MHL games this year over in Russia, the tier right below the KHL. Sam Dickinson is number 6 for Chris Peters, 6'3", 200-pound left-handed defenseman for the London Knights of the OHL. Nearly, or just over, a point per game guy for them this year, 53 points in 52 games. Not sure the Blackhawks are going to be targeting left-handed defensemen, though, inside the top 10. So I don't really see Silayev or Sam Dickinson being on their radar personally. Number 7 is Berkeley Catton, 5'11", only 160 pounds, but boy, can he rack up points. 83 in 50 WHL games for the Spokane Chiefs this year. Feels like it's going to come down to whether the size is going to hold him back and how teams feel about that. And then number 8, how about this? Cole Yzerman, his stock has really plummeted since the beginning of the year. Felt like he was going to be in the mix for the number 1 pick potentially. If anyone was going to challenge Macklin Celebrini, it felt like he could be an option. And was slotted in at number 2 by a lot of draft analysts. He's number 8 here for Chris Peters, 6 foot, 195-pound winger who has 60 points in 37 games for the U.S. national team development program this year. Consta Helenius, someone I outlined in my World Juniors preview because he was playing for Team Finland. He comes in at number 9, 5'11", 180-pound forward who's got 33 points in 43 Liga games this season, which is the top professional league over in Finland. So nearly a point per game guy at 17 years old. I mean, that's rather impressive for Consta Helenius. And then rounding out the top 10 for Chris Peters is Carter Yakimchuk, who's really boosted his stock this year. A 6'3", 190-pound right-handed defenseman could challenge Levshunov for being the first RHD off of the board in 49 games this year in the WHL for the Calgary Hitmen. How about these numbers? 53 points, 24 goals for a defenseman, along with 29 assists for Carter Yakimchuk, a big right-handed defenseman with some size as well. He's a super intriguing guy on the back end as well. So that rounds out Chris Peters' top 10. Let's see how it compares to Corey Pronman's. Number 1, like I said, Macklin Celebrini. It's basically all different here, Blackhawks fans. Anton Silayev, the 6'7" left-handed defenseman, comes in at number 2 for Corey Pronman. And Carter Yakimchuk, is the first right-handed defenseman off of the board at number 3 after being number 10 for Chris Peters. Number 4 is Caden Lindstrom. He just bumped down one spot. Artem Levshunov, who is number 2 for Chris Peters, is number 5 here for Corey Pronman. Berkeley Catton, number 7 for Peters, is number 6 for Pronman. He and Sam Dickinson, kind of flip-flop spots there as Dickinson comes in at number 7. Ivan Demidov, like I said, some people are a little higher on him than others. Seems like Peters is in that category, while Pronman has him down at number 8. Cole Iserman, then he has at number 9. That's crazy. If you would have told people that 7 months ago, it would have been rather interesting to see their reaction. And then rounding things out, a guy who wasn't ranked in the top 10 for Chris Peters is Zane Parekh, who is also putting up unbelievable offensive numbers for a defenseman. He's 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, also a right-handed defenseman, so that's notable for us Blackhawks fans. He has 79 points in 52 games for the Saginaw Spirit this year in the OHL. How about 27 goals to go along with that? 27 goals in 52 games as a defenseman for Zane Parekh. So a lot of offensive potential on the back end here this year. I think Silayev is probably the one who I think is going to be most known for his defensive presence, and I'm going to assume he has a really long reach and a real big body. Not sure if he's physical yet at this point in time, but has that mold to be just an absolute big bastard back there on the back end, kind of like Alex Vlasic has grown to be for the Blackhawks. So yeah, a lot of intriguing prospects here slated to go into the top 10. And none of them are even set in stone to go in the top 10 as well. There's a whole nother slate of prospects that I will be getting into, but the next time I'm going to be talking about these prospects, I'll be getting into Scott Wheeler and Bob McKenzie's top 10 before moving a little bit further down in the rankings. All right, there is my look at Chris Peters and Corey Pronman's top 10 currently for the 2024 NHL Draft. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans. Don't go anywhere because I still have to get into the weekly Mailbag Monday fan segment, except it's just been pushed back a day because I wasn't feeling all that great yesterday. But first, I got to talk to you all about Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Connor Bedard could be on his way to winning the Calder Trophy after returning from injury. Austin Matthews looks like he's on his way to winning the Rocket Richard and could even be pushing for 70 goals this season. And how about the Vancouver Canucks? They could be winning the President's Trophy for the top team in the NHL. And hey, you could be winning right alongside them by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. And Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey because you have the chance to win 100 times your cash payouts, and all you have to do is simply select whether superstars like Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid, or Connor Bedard will record more or less for their sleeper projections for goals, assists, points, shots on goal, or more in any given game. And again, Sleeper offers you the opportunity to win 100 times your cash, so start paying attention, make the correct picks, and you could be winning real big. And you could also go and use the promo code listed right there. That's Locked On NHL in all caps, and you'll get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. Or if you even want to just throw in $20 or $40, Sleeper will match you on any deposit up to $100. You just got to use that promo code Locked On NHL in all caps. And if you want to, you can go and see Sleeper's terms of use right now for more details. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're still tuned into this point of today's episode, per usual, just want to say thank you very much. I really do appreciate all of your support. And if you could go and help me out real quick, it only takes 2 seconds to go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe for Celebrini. Like I said, the new motto going on around here. And if you don't subscribe, that tells me that you don't want the Blackhawks getting Macklin Celebrini, and I don't know who wouldn't want that. So make sure to go and show some support to the show. I greatly appreciate it. And also make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, time to get into Mailbag Monday. Yes, I know it is Tuesday. Got pushed back a day because we just got some bigger things to talk about to kickstart the week, with the Hawks finally getting back in the W column against the Senators, Lucas Reichel being reassigned to the Rockford Ice Hogs. That took up a good chunk of the time of Monday's episode, so just kind of delayed this a little bit over here to Tuesday, but didn't want to forget about it. And again, if anyone out there has a question that they want answered by yours truly right here live on the show, make sure to go and drop that right now down below in the comments section. You can DM me on any of my social accounts. You can email lockedonblackhawks@gmail.com, and you can even go and post it in the community tab on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. Again, I really like interacting with all of my fans and all the listeners out there. I really appreciate it. So make sure to go and drop that comment if you have a question, and I'll answer it this time next week. All right, getting into it here. First question I got is from Sean Mack 27 on X. Any chance we see Gavin Hayes in Chicago or Rockford at the end of this year? Yeah, quite honestly, I think we do. And if you remember back to the end of last year, Gavin Hayes signed both a PTO and an ATO with the Ice Hogs after wrapping up his season with the Flint Firebirds. Didn't end up getting in any game action, but felt like maybe they just wanted him around the guys, or maybe to get some practice reps in at the pro level. But it feels like that was a good kind of bridge for him to do it once again this season. I would say Rockford is probably more likely than Chicago, but I'm not going to say it's completely out of the picture, because Gavin Hayes has been a man on a mission this season. He now has 13 goals in 16 games since being traded from Flint to the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, and 32 goals in 43 games on the season. He is lighting the lamp constantly. It feels like it's a gamely thing at this point for him. So yeah, considering his development and how well he played in a kind of diverse role for the United States at the World Juniors as well, and if he continues to round out his game, yeah, I really like the chances of Gavin Hayes making it to the NHL for the Blackhawks, and I do believe it's in the cards for him to make the leap to the pro level following the conclusion of this season. Next question I got from my good buddy, Big Will McClory. I meant to answer this last week, brother, but I completely forgot, as you texted me the question rather than the usual spots that I go when I preview for this episode. But making sure to get to it here today, and it's a good one, Blackhawks fans. He asked, if you swap Peter Mrazek and Jackson Stauber, what's the final score between the Hawks and the Ice Hogs? Yeah, it's a rather good one, Big Will. I think a big question we left out of there, or tidbit, a little breadcrumb you could have given me that would have allowed me to give a more accurate prediction here. You should have told me where the game is at, because if it's in Rockford, considering how the Hawks have been playing on the road for the last 3 months, I might have to go with the Ice Hogs, especially if Peter Mrazek is standing on top of his head. If the Ice Hogs can find a way to stop Connor Bedard, which I don't think they're going to be able to, quite honestly, I'd probably have to go with the Blackhawks just because they have Connor Bedard. But I think in a 7-game series, the Ice Hogs are winning at least one of those games with Peter Mrazek. He has the capability to steal one, maybe even two down at the BMO in Rockford. The Blackhawks at the UC, I think they'd take those ones. But it is kind of disgusting how I do believe those could be close games, showing you how bad the rest of the Blackhawks roster is, aside from Connor Bedard and Peter Mrazek. Don't want to sound like I'm dogging Philip Kurashev, Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, Alex Vlasic. Those guys have been great. Everyone else has kind of been meh. Next question I'm going to get to here comes from Old Sneaky Pete, who asked, do you think Dominic Bassey signs after the season? I get a lot of Dominic Bassey questions here on the show. Feels like a lot of people love him out there. Maybe that's in part to me because I've been posting updates on him for the last 3 years. And this year, it's kind of been trending in the wrong direction for him as of late in terms of his numbers, but his entire body of work in college is still rather impressive. And I actually asked Mario Tirabassi from CHGO Blackhawks this not all that long ago, and he said he thinks that Bassey could be signing with the Ice Hogs potentially, but probably doesn't get an NHL level deal with the Blackhawks, which I kind of understand. They can only dish out so many of those, and it's not like Bassey is a sure thing to do well at the pro scene, so maybe giving him an opportunity to play in Indy and be a third stringer possibly if Comesso and Staubs are the 1-2 combo again next year. I think that would be a good spot for him, and I think he has shown enough in college to be worthy of a little bit of a flyer there in the organization. Next question comes from PHHDVM, who asked, how about trading the Tampa first-round pick for someone who's already NHL proven? I just think it's a little bit too early for that personally, considering we don't expect the Blackhawks to be all that aggressive for the big fish in the market this summer, potentially saving up for the loaded 2025 free agent class, which I really don't have a problem with. I think it would have to be a really good deal for the Blackhawks and one that Kyle Davidson couldn't say no to. I think 2025 and 2026 is probably when they're going to be more willing to trade some of those high-end picks because at that point in time, I think they'll have a little bit better of an understanding of where they're at, how the prospects have developed, which ones of them seem like they could be pieces of the puzzle moving forward. It just feels like it's still too early for the Blackhawks to take a gamble like that, and kind of knowing Kyle Davidson, I don't imagine that's a gamble that he's willing to take at this point in time, parting with another first-round pick. Next question comes from @lane_94, who asked, when will Drew Comesso be NHL ready at the soonest? Even given Arvid Soderblom's struggles this year, I still envision him getting an opportunity to come back as the backup to kickstart next season. I think it would have to go tremendously wrong for him in training camp, considering he is under contract for another year, for him to not open up next year as the Blackhawks backup. And I don't think they're in any rush to be getting Drew Stauber up to Chicago as well. I think they want to be patient with him. So I would say the earliest we see Drew Comesso make his NHL debut, barring an injury to one of those guys, maybe at the midway point next season. But again, I think Arvid Soderblom would have to be struggling at that point in time to call up Drew Comesso. I feel like the 2025-2026 campaign is the most likely time for him to arrive full-time for the Blackhawks in goal. And then the last question I got here comes from Lainey Porter, who emailed in the podcast and asked, love the show, Jack. Thank you very much, Lainey. What do you make of Kevin Korchinski's first season with the Blackhawks so far? Did they make the right call, or should they have sent him back to junior? Thanks. I've kind of answered similar questions along this line throughout the course of the season. It's kind of funny because, there's peaks and flows, just like how it goes for the entire season. As a whole, I would say it's kind of meh for Kevin Korchinski. I'm not, discouraged by any means. It's not a good Blackhawks team. I think it hasn't been an ideal situation for him to be around either, given all the injuries, and he's kind of been moving D partners. I expected him to have some issues as an undersized 19-year-old in his own zone. The one thing I would say is a little concerning is it feels like he hasn't been aggressive enough or trusting his instincts or trusting his skills on the power play when given an opportunity. And Seth Jones hasn't been very good at the point for the Hawks power play all season long, but Alex Vlasic has kind of been the one who's been getting power play time because of his offensive development. And it felt like Kevin Korchinski was really going to be the next guy up, but hadn't made the most of that opportunity early in the season. And I don't think they've been giving him a ton of opportunity on the second unit recently as well. So that's the one thing that's kind of been a bit disheartening for me. But at the same point in time, the Blackhawks power play as a whole has been absolutely atrocious all year long. So I would say it's a on par first season for Kevin Korchinski. I didn't think he was going to be an earthbreaker right from the get-go, but I know he still does possess the goods to be a very special offensive defenseman, rover type of guy on the back end for the Blackhawks. I'm still very encouraged for his future. It's not like anything I've seen this season really has discouraged me whatsoever. And as far as whether it was the right call, it could go either way, but I do think there's something to be said about, putting him in a tough situation and kind of having to learn the hard way. There have been, a lot of good players who have developed in this league from just being in tough situations early on that kind of thickens their skin a little bit as they go on throughout the rest of their careers. And I think that's kind of the hope for Kevin Korchinski is, it's not going to be easy at a young age, but the hope is that it'll make things easier on you when you're 24, 25 years old and about to hit your prime. You just have this wealth of experience under your belt. So I think it was the right call at the end of the day. And again, I don't think it's been a disastrous season for Kevin Korchinski. I'm still very encouraged about where he is moving forward. I don't know if you'd consider him a prospect anymore at this point in time, but I still have him as the second best prospect in the Blackhawks organization behind Connor Bedard. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, and that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2. Make sure to also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.